Welcome to the Awaken the Matriarch Podcast. I'm your host, Melissa Collarette, lifestyle designer, transformational coach, author, and proud mama. And this show is a space and an opportunity for you to reclaim your power, share your gifts, and create a life that is in alignment with your true nature as a woman. And I'm so excited to dive into today's conversation because we are going to tackle the specific element of creating a life that's in alignment with your true nature by talking about reclaiming your time. And I am going to share with you the soulful productivity philosophy that I share in my matriarch program. And it is a philosophy that I've developed over the years that has allowed me to shift from hustle culture to creating a life that flows with the seasons out in nature, but also my seasons in life, to make sure that I'm keeping my cup full and moving away from this culture that constantly feeds this idea that I don't have enough time, that I should be rushing, moving faster, and doing more. So if you have ever felt or are currently feeling like there's just not enough time, or you're often feeling stressed and overwhelmed because you're juggling a lot. And here's the thing, as much as these tenets present a certain ideal, it's not always the reality. I understand that most of us are juggling way more than we should be on our own. So you're probably juggling work, parenting if you have kids, or the journey to becoming a parent, a spouse, or if you have one, or the energy of calling in one if you want one, or even just being single can be time consuming with other commitments and engagements. You might be juggling housework, your own creative ideas, and also trying to find a way to take care of yourself. And you might be struggling with all that because that is a lot. It's a lot. And through our conversation today, you will also shift from this feeling of like that is a lot to expanding your capacity and owning that you are here to experience a full life and that you can make room for what's most important to you, but also in a way that nourishes you. Because here's the thing, one of the reasons that we struggle with our time is one, we were brought up within a culture that from the Industrial Revolution, build this like 9 to 5 kind of ideal where you're supposed to show up and work, and prioritize other people's wants and needs ahead of your own, specifically as women, while also completely disconnecting us from nature's cycles and our feminine cycles. And that is such an important shift we must make as women in order for us to show up more powerfully in the world and also to take care of ourselves. You might be one of these women that just isn't living fully to her capacity. And I don't know any woman who's living fully to her capacity, or any man right now, because our culture needs to shift because it's not working. Yet, because we're in this grind, because we're in this cycle, it's not necessarily easy to restore harmony. However, we must do what we can to restore harmony within ourselves so that we can play the part that we are here to play for us to move things forward in a way that soothes us, that takes care of us and our planet, our younger generations and future generations as well. At least that's kind of my hope. I think it's really important to be considerate of other people's needs. However, I also do believe that you need to put the oxygen mask on yourself first. And I often tell people, like, if your gas tank is empty, you can't give someone a ride. You might have the car, you might have all the stuff, but if you're on empty, you just can't. And a lot of us are running on empty. And a lot of that has to do with not only where we're spending our time, but our relationship to time and our lack of relationship with our energy and our innate wisdom and needs. And so hopefully this conversation and what I'm going to share with you today will be an opening for you to reset. And, right now at the time of this recording, we are at like the cusp of the fall equinox. We're transitioning from late summer into early fall. And that is such a beautiful time to reconnect and change things up because I live in a part of the world where we have four distinct seasons. Summer, fall, winter, and spring are so different. And not only do they have different needs, but they also elicit different needs for myself and the way I want to show up in the world. So I'm going to share a little bit about how you can shift from feeling out of touch with your cycles and feeling overwhelmed and like you're not able to have enough time for yourself or the things you want to do in the world, to creating a more natural rhythm, resetting your priorities, and taking responsibility for your life in order to start taking action towards that. At the end of this podcast, I'm also going to invite you to a free training that I'm offering on September 23rd. So if you want to jump right in, the link is in the bio or in these show notes, wherever the podcast is right now. Link in my bio. I've been spending too much time on social media. But the link to that training is happening the link to the free training. I'm going to share a little bit more about it at the end of the episode is in the show notes. So if you want to save your spot right now, you definitely can. And this episode is going to set you up and, put you ahead of the game for the training. And I'm going to show you a tool during our time together that will help you create a structure that flows in your life. Okay. I love, so I want to kick things off with this quote by Gary Keller. He's the author of The One Thing, which is a great book. I highly recommend it. And if you don't want to take the time to read that book, there are also some great summaries of that book on YouTube. I love reading, but I'm also, I have boundaries around reading, whether it be physical books or audiobooks. I love audiobooks because I'm often walking, I'm often cooking, I'm often driving, and it's a great way for me to listen to content that I might want to read, but I don't take as much time reading on the couch. I might read 2, maybe 3 physical books a year, but I'll listen to a few more audios. And the books that I really love, I will have in both physical format and audio format, because then I get the learnings in a different format, and I really love that. So The One Thing is one that I do recommend, or Essentialism, if you want to dive more into resetting your priorities. Wasn't planning on plugging these 2 books, but since I'm going to share this quote by Gary Keller, why not? So here it is. It is not that we have too little time to do the things we need to do. It is that we feel the need to do too many things in the time we have. Let that land for a moment. This is why I created the Soulful Productivity philosophy, because there is a lot I want to do with my life. And I got tired and quite literally burnt out from feeling like I had to do it all at once, and also feeling like it was just never enough. And I just had enough of that. So let me share with you a little bit about my story, and then I'm going to share with you the 8 tenets of the Soulful Productivity philosophy, and then I'll walk you through 3 of those that will set you up for the free training on the 23rd. So, I was brought up A-type. I wasn't brought up A-type. I just kind of developed that. And I wanted to be a lawyer. I was good in school, and I was like, I'm going to do it all. I'm going to take care of my parents when I'm older, and I'm going to have this big job and this big career. And I was on that track. I went to college, and then I went to university. I got a psych degree. And I worked throughout high school while studying. And I remember in university was one of my first hit points where I was bartending plus studying, and I was really struggling. I was constantly ending semesters with cold sores or these major flus, and partially that was because of my diet, but also because I was just doing too much. I was stressed because I just had a hard time balancing the amount of studying that I had to do with work and living on my own and all that. But that was kind of what I thought was normal. I was like, you just push through. You don't feel well? Who cares? You still show up the next day. You have your period? Don't tell anyone. Do as if you don't bleed once a month. That's just normal. We don't talk about that stuff. And so I worked and studied. And then at some point, when I was about to start my coaching business, I was managing a restaurant and I was working about 60 hours a week. I was teaching private yoga, and I came across this idea that I have to acknowledge Danielle Laporte for this, which had me think about what would my ideal situation be in terms of how I spent my time and how could I bridge that out with my current reality. And since my week was so full, I devoted Mondays to looking more closely like the ideal I had created for my life. And it was the beginning of like literally being able to see that, okay, I can start with what I have, but I can start moving towards an ideal where there was a bit more space. I still didn't really feel like it was okay to want to maybe work less and rest and take afternoon naps and maybe shift the way I work throughout the seasons, which is something that has evolved over the years. But that was a start. And then in the work that I did with Landmark Worldwide, if you've never heard of Landmark, they have some really great courses. And I went through their whole curriculum for living. And in one of their programs called the Self-Expression and Leadership Program, we had to do our weekly planning because we were working on a project. And part of their philosophy has inspired my project planning approach that I also share in the Matriarch program or when I work with clients one-on-one, where you really go in on a project that lights you up inside. And it's actually because of the Landmark program that I was able to launch my yoga studio and then take some of those tools to create other projects in my life, like moving from Montreal and traveling across the USA for 6 weeks with my dog Bali by my side and moving to Tofino, also starting my business, writing a book while parenting solo. And those would be some of the core of like, I think my life projects, but also the way I build my business are the different focuses, whether it's launching my podcast as I did in the spring of 2025. And that I use that tool. And one of the things that stood out to me was not so much the weekly planning approach, but was this one thing that my coach Dominic had shared. And that was how she left herself like a day of blank space. She didn't schedule every day of the week. And to me, that was game changing. I was like, what? I don't have to schedule every minute of my day. I wanted to be a lawyer, guys. Okay. So I feel I had this kind of approach where I was like, I'm going to schedule everything. And I was a fan of the Franklin Covey kind of philosophy. The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People and the 7 Habits of Highly Effective Teens were books that had a big impact on my life. And so I really like this idea of like, I'm going to structure my calendar. I love color coding, but there was no white space. I scheduled everything in. And most of the time I was scheduling like work mostly and maybe other people's requests of me and appointments. I wasn't scheduling like me time. No, like who does that? I do now. But this idea of having white space was like, and moments where you're just allowed to say no and maybe not be non-committal was so lovely. So I started working towards that. And then when I moved to Tofino, living there is really when I started to tune into nature's rhythms. I was like digesting 15 years of living in the city where even though I'm a girl who loves nature, there was, a lot of artificial light and movement all the time. And there was very little silence or moments of stillness because it's a city. And when I live in a small surf town where the rhythm of the town is primarily inspired by the rhythm of nature, the storms, the waves, the surf. And I was there to surf. And so I started structuring my days to flow with the swell. And also I just noticed how people were living there, and it really inspired me because there was a lot more space for rest. It was raining a lot. So rain can sometimes make you want to go inward a little bit more. And there's less of a going against that. There was more of a flowing with that, the same way you do with surf. You can't push against the wave. You have to let the wave inspire your pop-up and then go with it. You can't want it to go faster or slower. You just have to surrender to nature's process. And on the days that there's no surf, there's no surf. Do something else. And on the days when the surf is good, well, you go out and get them. And one of the books that has inspired my business philosophy that I absolutely love, I'm going to drop it here because I just talked about surfing, is Yvon Chouinard's Let My People Go Surfing, which is like the manifesto he wrote for his company Patagonia. And if ever you have an interest in building a conscious business while also making room for values that support the kind of lifestyle you want, highly recommend it. And his idea of like letting his people go surfing was based on his philosophy that if the waves were good, he would let his employees go surfing, trusting that they would get the work done when the timing was right. It wasn't like, let's move against that. We know that the swell isn't always good. So let's go ride some waves and it'll probably fuel your creative juices to do better work afterwards. So I've woven that into my life as well. And if you follow me on social media, you've probably seen that even though I don't live close to surf, I stand up paddleboard quite a bit in the summer. I'll go hiking quite a bit in the fall, and then snowshoeing and cross-country skiing in the winter, or skiing and snowboarding. And I do all sorts of activities that are very much weather dependent. And so I have a lot of flexibility in my life that I've intentionally created so that I can go out and take advantage of these activities that fuel my soul and then come back feeling refreshed to be able to create something like this and serve my clients more powerfully as a result. So all of that woven together, has had a huge impact on my life. And then I also had made a decision that I wanted to build a home-based business where I could be a mom and have a business. And when I became a mom, not only when I became a mom, but when I was really in a conscious preparation to becoming one, I shifted my relationship to time from turning the alarm clock away and really cultivating a priority of waking up naturally, which I still do to this day. I am an early riser, so it's not an issue. I was up at like 5:15 this morning without an alarm, but I really listen to that. I also don't force myself to stay up later than I feel I need to most of the time. And that has really restored my sense of well-being. But from doing that to then when I became a mom, I just really surrendered to that season in my life. I wanted to savor this experience that was so finite, like pregnancy. As much as I would love to have more babies, and I dreamt of having 3 pregnancies, and maybe I will, but I knew I had this one right in front of me, and I was like, I'm going to enjoy this. This is the most important thing in my life right now because I can do all the other stuff at some point. And even raising my daughter, who's 5 years old, the newborn stage has a very different flow and experience of time. As right now, my daughter's 5, has started kindergarten. Like, time is so malleable. It is a construct that we've created so not everything happens all at once. But unfortunately, because we work with this Newtonian system, which is based on like, we have this amount of time and it has to feel like this, we kind of lose sight of the fact that we are seasonal beings and there are different seasons in life, and that also time is something we created, and that we can also like honor that and move things around for it to work for us. So fast forward to now, here we are at the cusp of fall, and I've just like did a time reset, knowing that my routine was going to change from summer to fall, but also from having a preschooler to now a kindergartner, and knowing that motherhood is at the center of the way I run my life, but also my well-being is at the center of that, because if mama's not doing well, then nothing's working. So taking care of myself, being there for my daughter, and then my business. So those are kind of like my 1, 2, 3, has an impact on the way I structure my days, as well as when we shift like our time clocks. The days are still long here, but they will get shorter. And so it's going to have an impact as to when I schedule things in my day, and also my need for rest and when I'm outside and all that stuff. So what I'm getting at is that I went from this feeling of like time was like there was never enough of it, and that I also had to find a way to do more, without prioritizing my well-being, and that if I crashed and burned, that was probably on me. And so I had to find a way to wake up earlier and stay up later to get more done. And holy shit, when I stopped feeling like I needed to do that, when I stopped feeling like I had to wake up at 4 a.m. to be a valuable human being, like so much shifted for me. I hate this feeling or this message that we put on people that's like, you have to do more in your day, so just get up earlier or just stay up later, instead of seeing, well, maybe there's some things we need to remove, and let's see if we can create space for taking care of you in that. And let's not feel, let's like, I feel that rest is something that has become almost like something you need to earn instead of like a non-negotiable requirement. And also, our needs for rest will vary at different times and stages in our life. And so I'm going to talk a little bit more about that, but I'm getting so passionate and I'm losing my train of thought. Let's talk about the 8 tenets of soulful productivity so you can get your time back and create a framework that works for you. And perhaps, what I share with you will work for you, or take what you need, leave the rest. And if you want more, join me at that free training I mentioned. I'll tell you more about it. So I'm going to walk you through these very briefly, and then we'll dive more deeply into 3 of them. So the first tenet of the soulful productivity philosophy is to choose being over doing. It's not just about what you're doing, but who you're showing up as, and taking responsibility for who you want to be in your life. Matriarch is my signature program because I truly believe that women need to awaken the matriarch within. And what I mean by that is awaken the wise, wild, powerful woman who is a stand for her cycles, her femininity, her power, her creativity, and doesn't put that less than anything else. I really believe that when we become the leaders of our life, aka the matriarch of our lives, we change the world by changing our world. And so one of the ways that I encourage you to shift your way of doing things is by connecting to who do you want to be? Who do you want to show up as in the world? There's so much more I could say about this, but I want to go through these succinctly so that we can have time for the 3 that I want to dive into more. The next tenet is to create a structure that flows. You might have been taught to prioritize everyone's needs first, but you haven't been taught how to create space in your life, but like a container in your life for those things that matter to you. And when I talk about and teach the creating a structure that flows, then this is really the concept that we're going to dive more specifically into on September 23rd in that free training. It's really finding, like, in connecting to the masculine energy within you, because the masculine is that container. I often teach this as like the riverbank of a river. The masculine is the bank. It's what holds the water. The feminine is the water that flows. So you need to create a structure in your life for the things that matter most to you, for the roles that you play, for the tasks that you want to accomplish, so that your feminine energy can relax and also show up as her best self. So this is where, if you feel like you're all over the place and you spend way too much time on one thing and not enough on another, this is where this tenet will serve you, and that training will definitely benefit you, because I'm going to walk you through a simple exercise where you get to bridge the gap between where you are and ideally wish to be. And I'm going to teach you how you can create a new structure for yourself, either for a longer term future or just for this season or the rest of 2025. And it really has a huge impact when you start looking at where you want to spend your time and seeing if it actually matches who you want to be and what you really want in your life. The third tenet is to work with nature. I've already talked about honoring the seasons of your life, but also in nature. And this is something I think is really important, particularly in the era of the internet and social media, where we're seeing information from all parts of the world. And what's happening in your environment has a huge impact on your experience of time and your needs. So like I said, I live in a part of the world with 4 distinct seasons, and they require a very different way of being, but also inspire different priorities. Winter is a completely different vibe than summer. And if I try to live my life without acknowledging that shift, I'm going to struggle. Winter is like shorter days. It's cold. It's hard. It's a lot of work just to manage a household in the winter. And it's also an incredible opportunity to slow down, to rest, to go inward, to allow things to just kind of settle for a while before spring reawakens and like creates the soil for seeds to be planted and to take root. Summer, there's this energy of playfulness, being outside longer days. I don't sleep the same amount in the summer than I do in the winter. I don't have that same need. One, because my body's not working the same way as it is in the winter at minus 40 degrees Celsius, when it actually needs to conserve a lot of its energy because it's working harder, literally for a survival basis. Okay, so look at where you live. Are you comparing the way you spend your time to someone who lives in Southern California when you live like in France or in Sweden and you're on a completely different vibe? I recently recorded an episode with Erin White. If you haven't watched it, check it out. She lives in Australia. So we literally live on opposite ends of the globe. And I love how we weave the seasonal wisdom in a different way, because when it's fall for me, it's spring for her. And so we can kind of tune into that while also seeing like what season of life is she in. So working with nature is not just about this Mother Nature, but also your nature. And I feel one of the great ways to reconnect to your true nature is by listening to Mother Nature's wisdom, to paying attention, what's happening. And one simple way you can start doing that is look at the trees. What's happening with the trees in the area where you live? And potentially what's happening with trees is a reflection of what you need. A tree in wintertime here, it's bare, it's standing still. It's not forcing, it's allowing. In spring, it's budding, it's coming alive again. In summer, it's like, I'm flourishing. In autumn, it's at its peak, it's transforming, and it's letting go. That's kind of a summary, but you might have a different style of tree where you live. So check out what's happening. Number 4, prioritize rest and play. Oh, this is so important. I've mentioned this already earlier. We have been taught that rest and play are things that you need to be earning instead of who you can be. And one, there is a biological need for sleep. You cannot go without sleep longer than a certain amount of time. And unfortunately, there's almost like a badge of honor if you don't sleep a lot for a lot of people. And your sleep needs will vary with time. Think about a newborn baby. It sleeps a lot, okay? Chances are a new mother needs to sleep a lot too. If only we acknowledge that instead of being like, oh, you need to do a million things while your baby is napping. No, maybe you also need to rest. But think about that. Newborn, different sleep need, 0 to 5, changes in sleep needs. Fast forward to teenage years. Whoa, what's happening? Sleeping till 10, 12? What? Crazy. Yet we start school at 7 or 8 o'clock in most places. Does that make sense? Maybe not. As an adult, you might feel like you have different sleep needs. Maybe when you're in perimenopause. Oh, I need to rest a little bit more. Menopause. Ooh, need to sleep more. And then suddenly you're like, I'm waking up at 4 and I want to go to bed at 7. This is just a random example I'm giving with you. But if you just look at your trajectory through your different needs for sleep over the years, you will see there's been a change in patterns. There might have been some consistent periods. I've become a morning person. I kind of always was, but there were periods of time in my life where I had to sleep longer. And definitely it changed when I had my child. So I don't look at rest as something I need to earn as much as like, this is a non-negotiable. And I know for me to feel good, I typically need a good 8 hours. I might sleep 6 hours here and there, and there's like a range. Usually from 6 to 10 is probably my max, but I also nap, and it might not be a 2-hour nap. Sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just a 10-minute like yoga nidra or like legs up the wall midday moment where I just get to reset. Now, with regards to play, we sometimes feel like play is something we need to do. And I'm going to bring you back to the number 1 tenet, choose being over doing. What if play was your way of being in life? What if you played in your life? What if you created a life that wasn't based on what you needed to do, but created one that felt nourishing and playful at its core? So this is where you get to choose if you want to bring that energy in your life instead of being like, I am going to go play pickleball from 5 to 6 on Thursday, and that's my playtime. I'm all about creating intentional time for play, joy, love, connection, all of these qualities you probably want to embody in your life. And I also feel one of the reasons we create these intentional periods of time is so that they can also infuse and be alive in our way of being. I was talking with one of my clients recently about creating, and actually that's the client I'm going to be speaking with right after recording this, was creating an intentional joy practice so that she could build that muscle. It's like going to the joy gym. And you might be in a stage in your life where you need to go to the play gym and like reconnect to what play looks like in your life, because it might not look like playing on the monkey bars when you're in your late 30s, early 40s, or however young you are. But what might feel playful for you might not only come from the action that you're engaging in, but also who you're being in that. One of the ways I feel playful, curled my hair this morning. I'm wearing a vibrant mint top, got my gold hoops. Wish they were real gold, but they're fake gold. Don't matter. And bringing that makes me feel alive. It makes me feel playful. And then also Bali kind of interrupted the intro at the beginning, and he's on my lap. If you're listening, obviously you can't see that, but I was like, okay, let's have fun with this. My dog wants to be part of the episode. Let's do that. So prioritize rest and play. Look if that's something that you feel is outside of you instead of something that you're channeling from within. And then when it comes to rest, can you really get honest about what your needs are? And if you're struggling with that, then I really recommend you look at that, because there might be things going on in your life, depending on the season in life that you're in, where you do need more rest. When you're going through a really difficult time, going through a stressful period, you might need to rest more because your body's trying to restore. And that's definitely something to pay attention to. Tenet number 5 is to enjoy the process. You might be goal-oriented and there's a lot of things you want to do with your life, but if you aren't enjoying the process of this predefined destination, then chances are, if you get what it is that you say you want, it's not going to feel as fulfilling as if you choose to also enjoy the ride and the way you get there. And this is something that I have found in running my own business and helping people create their business. It's not just about hitting the target. It's like, are you proud of how you're showing up in your life? Are you enjoying the ride? Or are you just trying to rush through? Because the thing is, there aren't guarantees for a lot of the things that we set out to do. And I feel like a goal, it's amazing to attain it. But one of the things that makes a goal the most fulfilling is looking at everything that went into it. That's what I feel like. If, I often tell people, like, you got to create your own podium, your own like Olympics in life. So for some people, it's actually a sport in the Olympics that they practice. But what's your Olympics? And, I feel those who probably feel most fulfilled, whether or not they step on the podium, is this knowing that they put everything they could and that they're proud of the way they spent, say, 4 years preparing for this event, that last 15 seconds. And I think that's really important, to find joy in the process of your life. Tenet number 6 is to move from never enough to abundance. Because if you feel like there's never enough time, you might need to start paying attention to that pattern and that thought process you might have and that relationship you have to time and probably to other things. If you're feeling like you don't have enough time, you probably have that experience in other areas of your life. You don't have enough money, you don't have enough energy, don't have enough attention from your spouse, you don't have a good enough relationship with your mom, you don't have enough energy to start something you want to do, you don't have X, Y, and Z. And I say that from someone who has definitely experienced that. And I still do from time to time. I can definitely go into lack very quickly and have to consciously shift from that feeling of lack to abundance. And one of the greatest ways to shift to abundance is gratitude. I remember sipping on a yogi tea. They had these little quotes on them. And one of the quotes was, gratitude is the door to abundance. And I never forgot it. Sometimes I do, but like it's still in there somewhere. And so if you feel like you don't have enough time, one of the fastest ways to reconnect to this feeling of abundance and expansiveness around your relationship to time is to literally write down 5 things you're grateful for having had time to do, or that you have time to do, and paying attention to like, oh, wow, I'm so grateful that I get to wake up with my kids in the morning, or I'm so grateful that I get to go for a walk with my dog in the middle of the day. I'm so grateful that I'm 40 because I've had 40 years on the planet. What a freaking gift. that is. So if you can look at what you already have, it might open you up to seeing what's possible and start making that shift. Okay. Again, more to say on all of these. I go deeper into all these tenets in the Matriarch program if ever it's something that interests you. The next round starts at the end of the month. The seventh tenet is the art of saying no. This is one that I'm going to go more deeply into in a minute. You got to say no. To say yes to your life and to what feels most important inherently means that you're going to have to say no to something or someone. And I'll give you some examples of that later on. But that I feel is something that a lot of women specifically, and if you have a people-pleasing tendency, have to work through in order to enjoy their life. And it's often uncomfortable, and you'll need to do it in order to realize what it is that you want to realize in your life. And then lastly, the eighth tenet is to take responsibility. Okay, where you are is just a starting point. It's not necessarily where you're going to end up, but if you're feeling like burdened or overwhelmed, I feel you. And the truth is that you can't start anywhere else than where you are right now. And so you need to take responsibility without blaming or shaming yourself. Okay, you can learn from what has worked and what hasn't, but you need to make a decision like, okay, this is what is in my life, and I'm going to be responsible for that, and then honor the choices I've made, even if some you might like wish you had redone. But the thing is, there isn't a redo. It's like, this is it. You might have feel like, oh, I married the wrong person. Well, you married that person, and now here we are. What are you going to do about it? Okay. And this isn't about getting hard on yourself. It's also about practicing kindness and gentleness and compassion. Often, to take responsibility for your life, you probably have to forgive yourself for the things you might, quote unquote, regret or wish you had done differently, and start from there. All right. Let's dive more deeply into choose being overdoing. We're going to talk about prioritizing rest and play and the art of saying no. And I'm going to tackle these intentionally so that we can also wrap up this conversation and set you up for the free training on the 23rd. So with the choosing of being overdoing, there are things we need to do in our life. Like inherently there is stuff that needs to happen. You know, I'm the one that mops the floors. I'm the one that rakes the leaves, cuts the grass, washes the dishes. I'm the one that records, edits, uploads this podcast. I'm the one that washes my windows. That I basically don't groom my dog though. There are things that I delegate, and actually delegation is a great way to create more space in your world. But there might be things that you're like, I actually don't want to invest in that, or I actually want to do it. So one of the ways to shift from this feeling of like there's too much to do and not enough time is to reconnect to who you are. And that takes courage to reconnect. And if you're feeling overwhelmed right now and like you don't have enough time, you're disconnected from who you really are. And you need to slow down and quite literally, maybe right now, take 3 breaths. And remember that you are so powerful. You are a beautiful human being. You are a soul that decided to embody in the body that you're currently in. And you can also choose to reset the priorities of the person you want to be at this stage in your life. Who are you? And who do you want to be? Even just yesterday, I was reconnecting to like, who am I in this moment? And we have this beautiful exercise in the Matriarch program that really allows you to declare that and own it. You know, who I am is I'm a source of love and light in this world. And I have to consciously choose that every single day. And there are days where I have just been in the dark. And it's those experiences that have also allowed me to know what it's like to be a source of love and light in the world. So it's not about being that like, or you know, your best self all the time, because there will be hard moments in your life, but it's coming back to your center and remembering who you are. I'm a mom. That is an identity that I own and I love it. And that means my priorities are surrounded around that. I am the matriarch of my life. That means that I'm a wise, wild, powerful woman that's constantly learning and evolving. And I have to come back to that. I have to come back to that version of myself. I am a person who wants to have a great impact on women's lives. And that means it influences the way I want to show up in my life, but also in my work. And that impacts the way I clean those dishes, rake those leaves, walk my dog. And so what I encourage you to do as a simple exercise is to write down who you want to be. And if you're feeling stuck on that, you can think about what are some qualities of people you are inspired by that you admire. Maybe think about 3 people and be like, oh, they're like this, and I would love to be more like that. And I remember doing this with one of my clients when she was in the Matriarch program. We actually worked on it one-on-one. And we had talked about what she wishes for her daughter. And she had mentioned how she wanted her daughter to be more confident. I was like, okay, so how do you need to be that to model that for her? And so that was a big part of the work we did, is her connecting to confidence within herself and being that, showing up, making decisions from a place of confidence instead of doubt. So you can think about 3 people that you're inspired by. What are some 3 qualities that they possess that you would like to, or ways of being that you would like to embody? You can then write out, I want to be X, Y, and Z. Write out at least 3. You can write more. And then rewrite them with, I am that. I am confident. I am a source of love and light. I am a powerful, wise woman. Whatever resonates for you. And start practicing those. You might want to put them on a Post-it note where you can see them on a regular basis, so that when you start your day, you can look at them and choose to be that person. You might want to choose a way of being for the different roles you play. For example, you want to be a mom, or you're a mom. I say this often for aspiring mamas, especially in my book, Aspiring Mama. It's like you have to shift from wanting to be a mom to embodying being a mother right now. Okay? So there might be something you're aspiring to become, and you need to start channeling that energy today. And so, for example, you might want to connect to a way of being in an area of your life where you already are or wish to be. For example, I want to get married. I want to be a wife. So I'm like, okay, I need to channel wifey material. I need to connect to my inner wife and be that in my life for myself, but also when I show up in the world. So if you're a mom, for example, you might look at, okay, what's one way of being in that role? Who do I want to be? I want to be a playful mom. I want to be a attentive mom, an inspiring mom, whatever it is. And then shift from I want to be to I am an inspiring mom. And then when you enter your role as a parent or as a mother in your day, connect to that and let that lead your actions. It might not always be like that. That's okay. You might say, oh, there was a moment where I was like, oh, I need to shift into being the authoritative parent. And that was who I needed to be before I did, because I'm pretty easygoing, but there are moments where it's like, okay, I'm the only adult in the room and I need to be that. I need to be the adult. Even though there's some days where I wish someone else would fill that role for me, that doesn't happen when you're a single parent and you're alone with your child. You got to step into that. So there was a moment I really needed to practice being the authoritative parent. Even though I'm a loving kind, I had to be like, no, I say no, and that's it. Okay. Maybe you have another role. Perhaps it is in the work that you do, and you want to be a fierce leader. Fierce leader? Maybe more a fierce leader or a loving leader. Perhaps you aspire to be a writer, and you need to connect to, I am a creative. I am an artist. You need to embody the identity and then do from that place. Okay? So that would be my advice for you in starting to awaken this practice of being overdoing, because it will impact what you do, hands down. Okay. Again, more on this, but for the sake of time, hopefully this is a good taster for you. Now, with prioritizing rest and play, I did talk a little bit about it when we were going through the 8 tenets. And what I would recommend is for you to really look at what you need to rest and restore your mind, body, and spirit at this time. What does your sleep routine look like? Are you getting enough sleep? Is the environment where you sleep conducive for rest? For example, I had a client years ago who was transitioning from being a lawyer to starting her own business. And this was one area that we really tackled. She was a mom of three, she still is. And her room was just not conducive for quality sleep. It was cluttered. There was papers underneath her bed. And we really focused on her creating a safe haven and a restful haven where her body could rest at night. So you might really start by doing a deep cleaning of your bedroom, maybe changing your sheets, maybe removing like old legal documents that are in boxes underneath your bed, like clear that out, Mary Kondo that shit. Okay. Spark joy in your sleepful, like where you rest. Are you also confounding that area in your house or where you live with other things that are out of context? For example, I had a client who used to work on her bed till like 3 a.m. And I was like, that's not going to be supportive for your well-being. So I may watch a movie in bed once in a while, but it's very rare. Usually when I've got COVID or some sort of virus that's keeping me in bed, or like occasionally my daughter and I will watch like The Gruffalo in bed, and it's just like, it's a treat. But otherwise, my room is for sleep, sex, a nap here and there, and then I get changed in there and all that stuff. But my bed is an area where it's like my body knows that I sleep there. It understands that that's what's happening. Okay. So look at what your sleep needs are, and then look if you're creating an environment that is conducive for rest. And I mean, there's so much more on this conversation. Of course, your diet, your stimulants intake, caffeine being one of them. I have one, max two coffees because I don't want that much caffeine in my life. But if you're, for example, drinking coffee past noon and you're having a hard time falling asleep, that might be something to look into. If you're feeling really anxious, are you drinking a lot of alcohol before bed? Is your diet conducive for, allowing your body to rest and restore during the night? Those are all things that you might want to consider. Okay. And then the most important thing is that rest is not something that you need to earn, but you need to prioritize it because no one's going to do that for you. Okay. And really look at the season in life that you're in because it's going to influence that. Look at your cycle as a woman. You might need more rest leading up to your bleed the first few days, but you might feel like on fire when you're ovulating. Okay. This is something I teach, and we're going to look a little bit more deeply during the training. When it comes to play, what feels like play in your life? Are there activities that feed your soul that either you have been engaging in but haven't been paying attention to the fact that these feed your need for play, or that you've been putting off because you feel, well, maybe it's not important. Play is so important. A coach I had worked with had said something around like how depression is the opposite of play. And although I feel sometimes we go through depressive states as a protective mechanism and as a way to heal, and I don't think it's realistic to think that you'll never experience that in your life, I also do think that play is essential. And that's also something, I know this episode is targeted mostly at women, but I feel men really need to be supported in their play as well. And we play differently. And so if you're having challenges in your relationship, look if you're engaging in activities that feel playful to you, and if your partner is as well. And I think prioritizing rest and play is not just for you, it's for the entire household. And one of my favorite quotes that I think about as a parent, but also as a human, is that that a child's work is to play, and also that your best ideas will come from play, not work. And if your work doesn't feel like play, then you might need to take responsibility and see, like, how can it be playful? Do I need to wear like red shoes when I'm writing emails just to make it fun? Or do I need to put a clown nose on when I'm making sales calls so that I'm having more fun? Now, there are things in your life that you will need to shift and no longer do, but you might be realizing that there's things you actually do love, but it's lost its luster, and you might need to bring the play in it. So it's important to take time to reconnect to that and reprioritize it. See, how can I weave play in these day-to-day tasks? And is there some intentional time in my life that I'm devoting to play? And I, go to the play gym, because most of us need to work it out for sure. So hopefully that that helps you reconnect to that. Now let's talk a little bit about the art of saying no. You have to treat your yes as sacred. I say no a lot because I want to make sure that when I'm saying yes, I actually mean it. And there are moments where I'm like, wait, I just said yes, but I have to backtrack on it. I often have to restore my word because it might just not work for me. And depending on what you're focusing on in your life, one of the ways to help you practice the art of saying no is to be clear on what your priorities are and what kind of the boundaries that you need to set or enforce in order to focus on what it is that's most important to you. I'll give you an example. As I'm transitioning from summer to fall, my work routine is different than it was over the summer. It was a lot more flexible and lax over the summer. Now there is a structure where it's like, I'm working from this time to this time on these days, and I need to reinstall these boundaries that I kind of like let go of over the summer, like answering a call from a friend during the day. Or even yesterday, my mom popped in just to say hello. And I was like, Mom, I love you. I'm sorry, but I have to get to work. Like I was just about to do some accounting and she was just checking in, and it's so lovely. And there are definitely moments where it's like, okay, I'm going to take that 5-minute break and just chat, but it wasn't appropriate at that time. I was in a flow and I was like, if I shift, it's going to be so much harder. It's going to take me that much more time to get back into my flow. And then even later on in the day, I was working from a coffee shop, and a woman I love, who was my piano teacher growing up, was like, you're working too hard. Why don't take a few minutes? I'm going to do your numerology reading. She's a modern day witch and has so much wisdom in that area. But I was like, thank you so much for that offer. Not right now. I want to get this work done so that I can move on with my day. And she's like, it's only going to take 5 minutes. How often does someone say it's only going to take 5 minutes and it's not actually only 5 minutes? Let's be real. So I stuck to my no. And then and I was like, I knew I was recording this episode today, and I was like, well, what a great experience to share, because there was a part of me I was like, oh, that sucks. Like, I don't want to say no to you, but I'm saying no to you so I can say yes to me. And I'm not saying no to you as a human being. I'm just saying not right now. It's not the right time. So for those of you who have those people pleasing tendencies, I think it's important to remind ourselves that we're not, rejecting a person. It just might not be the right time and place. And if you have a hard time receiving a no, this might also be difficult for you to say no because you feel rejected when someone says no to you. I read a whole book on healing your rejection wound over the summer. It's not available in French, but if you want a little summary on that, go check out my episode on joy and grief, which is episode 11. And I'll link it in the show notes in case you want to listen a little bit more about that. Now, if ever you feel uncomfortable setting a boundary with others, you might need to reconnect to why it's valuable to you first and get really clear on that. So one thing you can do to help you look at the art of saying no and see where do you need to say no in your life is to really get clear. What are your priorities? What is it going to take? You can't balance it all at once. If your focus is to start your business this year, you may not have time to be on the parent committee at school. And that's okay. You are allowed to not be everywhere at once. I have a boundary with regards to activities with my daughter. I'm like, one activity per season. And actually this season, she's not enrolled in anything because I don't have the space for it. I don't have the capacity for it. It's just not going to work at this time. I know this winter we're going to do skiing and that's going to be great. But I have let go of any guilt or pressure to have her enrolled in gymnastics, dance, hockey, you name it. If it works for you, hey, freaking men, go for it. Go all in. For me, it doesn't feel energizing. It actually would feel stressful. And so it's a no. So this is just something that you'll need to revisit. Your boundaries might shift based on the seasons or what your priorities are. And if you have too many priorities that are conflicting with one another, then you really need to get clear on what's most important and what are some of the rules you want to live by. And rules might be more like constructs you want to follow. They might not be like super binding, because there might be moments where you want to create some space to flow. But I think it's really important for you to pay attention to seeing, like, when are you treating your yes as sacred, or are you saying yes when you really mean no? I need to learn how to do that better. And this is something I see time and time again with my clients, is that They want to take something on for themselves. They want to make a change in their life. They want to start a project, whether it's a business or a move or a renovation or creative expression. And one of the things that's holding them back is that they're giving more of themselves to others and not enough to themselves, whether it's their children, their spouse, friends, colleagues, etc. And that is something that needs to stop. I remember a client of mine who worked for Pepsi at the time, and she was spending way too much time on emails. And we had to reset the boundaries around that. It's like, this is not the most important aspect of your job. So we need to find a way for this to work, because it is a task that needs to be handled. And you might need to set new rules up around what kind of emails you're responding to, how much time you're taking to respond, because most of the time, a really urgent email that isn't responded to will be followed up by a call. And most of the time, an email after 48 hours, particularly in the corporate world, is completely obsolete. So we looked at that aspect of her life and looked at what can we set so that you get to do the work that you're actually meant to do, and talk to your boss about these new constructs that you're setting for yourself, so that you don't feel like quitting simply because you're getting a million emails a day. It wasn't a million, but it was a lot. And this unexpressed expectation that she should be responding right away. It wasn't working. So she had to say, like, I'm checking emails from this time to this time on Mondays. And then if you don't hear back from me, it's because I'm on the road with the clients that we actually want to sign for our company. For example, email is such a great place to start for a lot of people. If you have your email open all day long, you might set a boundary around that. So take a look at the areas of your life that might feel most draining and see, is there one boundary you need to set? And that might mean, okay, I'm not allowing myself to spend more than 20 minutes on choosing the title of my book. You might want to spend 20 hours if that's what you want. But are you honoring what you feel you have the capacity for? So there you have it for this intro on the soulful productivity philosophy. For the sake of time, I'm going to start wrapping this up. I just want to go over the 8 tenets really quickly so that you can have them. And they'll also be in the show notes if you want to jot them down. So the 8 tenets of the soulful productivity philosophy are: choose being over doing, create a structure that flows, work with nature, prioritize rest and play, enjoy the process, move from never enough to abundance, the art of saying no, and take responsibility for your life. We looked at choosing being over doing and the key steps you can do to start stepping into the version of you want to be. We looked at prioritizing rest and play so that you can stop feeling as if it is something that you need to earn, but rather make it something essential and non-negotiable in your life. And we opened the door to the art of saying no by inviting you to look where you need to set and enforce boundaries, either new ones or to restore old ones that you've kind of stopped enforcing over the summer or whatever it was. As I've been mentioning throughout, I am offering a free training on September 23rd at 2 p.m. Eastern, and I'm going to walk you through creating a structure that flows so that you can reclaim your time this fall. It is going to be a workshop style. I will briefly review these 8 tenets, but we will go through this simple exercise that will help you bridge the gap from where you currently are spending your time to where you ideally want to be spending your time, and start taking action in a way that helps you create a life that is nourishing for you. We're moving away from hustle culture. We're moving away from overthinking. We're moving away from pressure and feeling like it's never enough. We are creating space for honoring your natural rhythms and cycles in womanhood and lifehood so that you can really create a life that feels nourishing for your soul, for your mind, for your body, for your loved ones, and contribute to restoring harmony in this beautiful world that we live. Thank you so much for being here today. I would love to hear from you. What is your number one takeaway from this episode? You can send that to me at info@awakenthematriarch.com. You can sign up for the free training in the show notes. And if you are looking to go deeper into your expansion as a woman and become the matriarch of your life, then I highly encourage you to join the upcoming Matriarch program that starts September 30th. That information is also linked in the show notes. I will see you next time. Have a wonderful day. Bye.